So we know January as the crap month of the film industry. Like, we know a lot of terrible movies come out in January. And to be honest, last year's January wasn't that bad. However, this year's January, I felt like I was in pain watching many, many movies. Let's trudge through the worst January 2016 has to offer. Yay. Oh, God. So I will tell you this. There are two movies that I know would make this list, but I just haven't seen yet. So I better mention them. 50 Shades of Black will definitely make this list once I see it. I know I shouldn't judge before I see a movie, but I just know it's going to be bad, and I will be seeing it very, very shortly. And another movie that I haven't bitten the bullet to see yet is Norma the North. I'm waiting until I can possibly see it for free because I don't want to pay money for something like this. It looks terrible. This is probably going to be the worst movie of the year. So with that said, let's get to the movies I actually have seen so far from January, and let's talk about the worst. Now, to be completely honest, my number 10 probably shouldn't be on here. I probably should have given it a 3, but I feel like it's a bit more forgettable for me, and so I had to give it 2 stars. It is Terminus. I honestly would recommend you seeing this movie if you're a big fan of old school sci-fi, if you're a fan of like the Twilight Zone kind of stuff or X-Files. This might be a movie you should see. It might be a movie you'd like. My number 9 is Monster Hunt, and I think I went a little bit insane while watching this movie. It's one of those movies that's trying to be family friendly but trying to cater to the kids for certain long scenes to the point it's really goofy and very weird and just so freaking bizarre, but sometimes it's entertaining because of that. And that's why I ended up giving it 2, because it's definitely not the worst that January has to offer. My number 8 is The Fifth Wave. This is the film that made me actually feel just terrible about young adult novel adaptations, because this is the first one that made me feel, oh, it's so overdone. There are elements of this movie that I really like, but at the same time I've seen better in other sci-fi movies, other movies about alien invasions. Now I will say that there are many moments in this film where I did laugh out loud, I just really couldn't stop laughing. Mainly because I was laughing at the film rather than laughing with it. And so there was still some entertainment value, and so that's why The Fifth Wave for me is my number 8. I got 7 more to go through, people. I got 7 more worse than Fifth Wave. My number 7, Western film, Diablo. If you saw my Jane Got a Gun review, I do have a clip of Diablo. If that clip doesn't convince you that this is a really terrible movie, I don't think anything will. And that's the only part of the film where I thought it was so hilariously bad. Like, it was entertainingly bad. The last act of the film actually entertained me. As soon as Danny Glover comes onto the screen, everything after that I actually enjoyed. And so that was why I gave it 1.5, and why there are 6 movies worse than it. My number 6, The Forest. I did like the psychological element of it. I liked the forest and how they were playing tricks on people for them to commit suicide. I like the whole aspect of that, but once you know that, you know more than the character, and it makes you feel like, oh, hey, it's just an hallucination. We know it's just a hallucination, but she's so duped into it that it feels like the character's really dumb and you know more than the character. Other than that, the acting was good, at least from our main character, and the forest looked good, but there was a lot of cheap, really terrible jump scares and a lot of things that just really wasn't too creative. My number 5, Ride Along 2. The same exact movie as Ride Along, just more annoying and more over the top, and it feels like a Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. That's what it is. It's just like Paul Blart Mall Cop 2, where it's the recreation of the first film, just done more over the top, more annoying, more loud. There are some elements of Ride Along 2 that I did enjoy, while others just plain sucked. And I will admit that I did laugh at some moments, but other times it feels like it's just trying its best to recopy all the same jokes from the first one. If you have Ride Along and you've seen Ride Along, you've seen Ride Along 2. My number 4, Mojave. Great performance by Oscar Isaac. That's about it. That's all the movie has going for it. It is boring as hell. And that's coming from a guy that really loves slow-burning thrillers. This is slower than any slow-burning thriller I have ever seen. So much so that I wouldn't even call it a thriller. I don't know what to call this movie. It's a film that tries to be smart, but just isn't, in many ways. It tries to put commentary on the soullessness of Hollywood lifestyle, but it just fails in that aspect as well. But I have 3 movies even more boring. My number 3, Mercury Planes. Yep, Scott Eastwood is in 2 movies in my top 10 worst films of January. This one, I don't even know what to say about it. It's a straight-to-DVD movie, and so you know it's going to be bad, but it's just... I don't know what else to say about this movie. I'm at a loss of words. My number 2 is a Sci-Fi Channel film that came out in January, so you know that combination can't be good. It's 400 Days. This is another film that tries to be a Twilight film, kind of like Terminus, but Terminus did it a lot better, and this one just feels wasted. Like, there's even a moment where it tries to be a psychological horror, and it actually is working kind of well. Not as good as other space movies that deal with this aspect, but still well enough that, oh, it's going to be a psychological horror, but then it's like, nope, let's throw that all away and do something completely different for the last act of the film. It's almost like it got bored with itself and decided to do something different. And the ending for me just feels like meaningless garbage. But you know what's garbage? The movie that I think is the worst film of 2016 so far, and the worst film of January, at least until I see 50 Shades of Black and Norma the North. It is Dirty Grandpa. I don't even want to waste words about this film. The only good thing about it is Robert De Niro and Zac Efron. They're acting, they're bringing it all, they're trying to be the best they can be in this film, and they actually have good chemistry. But it feels like this movie just doesn't deserve the talent they're bringing to it. Everything about this film is just garbage. I know it's a crude humor comedy, and I know that it's trying to be crude, but at the same time, there are better crude humor comedies. Like, this feels like a crude humor comedy that's just trying to be shockingly crazy and just offensive in all the wrong ways. It's like going for shock value more than anything. Like, most of the things that Robert De Niro weren't really funny, but they seemed funny because it was him saying it. Like, if that's the funniest thing you have going for it, then it's just not funny. But the side characters were annoying as all hell. At least in Hot Pursuit, I only had to deal with 2 annoying characters. In this one, I had to deal with 5 or 6 side characters that were just so plain awful. I think the picture in my thumbnail for my movie review of Dirty Grandpa says it all. But hey, at least I gave it a half a star. But that's really being generous, honestly. So that was my worst films of January so far, but then again, I haven't seen Norma the North, and I haven't seen 50 Shades of Black, which I am seeing 50 Shades of Black pretty soon. And I'm dreading it. So, did you see any movies in January? If you have, what were the worst films? What movies did you feel are some of the worst films that January has to offer? But if you like this video, please subscribe. Take a look at my movie reviews. I do have movie reviews for all the movies I just mentioned in this countdown. And so go ahead and check them out if you're interested. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.